Everyone at the outpost said the same thing. Feeding her means death, they whispered. They warned each other in dark corners and low voices. But Kyle didn't listen. He had seen her locked in a steel cage, chained like an animal, covered in dirt and bruises. She wasn't like the others, she was taller than any human. Stronger too, an alien giantess. They called her, captured during a border raid. Brought to the outpost as a prize. A monster, they said, a killer. But Kyle saw something else. Something sad in her eyes, something tired. She didn't scream or growl. She didn't fight anymore. She just sat there quiet, waiting for something or someone. Kyle wasn't a soldier, not anymore. He worked as a mechanic now, fixing broken machines, staying out of trouble. But trouble always found him, especially when he saw injustice. That day he walked past her cage again, and paused. She was watching him. Her eyes followed his every move. Not with hate, but with hunger, not for food maybe, but for hope. He looked around. No one was watching. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small piece of bread, old but still good. He slowly moved toward her cage. Her eyes didn't blink, she didn't move. Kyle held the bread between the bars. For a moment she didn't react, then slowly she leaned forward. Her large hand gently took the bread. Fingers brushed his skin, warm, soft, not dangerous. She didn't bite, she didn't roar, she just ate quietly. And for the first time she looked. "Calm, Kyle," a voice shouted from behind. He jumped. It was Jenkins, one of the guards. "You feed her. You die next," he warned. "She's cursed. She bonded to the last man who fed her." He disappeared the next day. Kyle said nothing. He walked away, but his heart beat fast, not from fear, from something else. Curiosity, connection. That night Kyle sat in his small room. The metal walls felt colder than usual. The lights flickered, the wind howled outside. He couldn't stop thinking about her, the way she looked at him, like she recognized something in him, something familiar. He dreamed of a forest, tall red trees, strange lights dancing in the sky. He was standing in front of a fire, and she was there not in chains but in armor. Proud, tall, and smiling, he woke up sweating. It was just a dream, wasn't it? The next morning, Kyle returned to the cage. He didn't plan to. His feet just took him there. She was awake, already waiting. When she saw him, she stood up. Tall, silent, beautiful in a strange, powerful way. He held out more bread. This time, she didn't wait. She came closer, took it gently, and then she did something that made his blood freeze. She reached out and touched his face, just one finger, soft, slow, like a memory. Guards started shouting from behind, "Step away."
"She's bonding."
One raised a shock stick. Kyle stepped in front of her. "No," he said. "She's not dangerous," but they didn't believe him. They pushed him back, shouted orders. The alien giantess didn't fight, but her eyes changed. They burned like fire, and then she spoke. Just one word, soft, deep, and full of meaning. "Mate," she said. The guards froze. Kyle didn't understand at first. Then he saw it. She wasn't trying to hurt him. She had chosen him in her world. Feeding was a sign, a bond, a promise. He looked at her, and for a moment the cage, the guards, the outpost, everything disappeared. There was just the two of them. One human, one alien. One connection neither of them could explain. But everyone else saw something else. They saw danger, they saw death. They saw the beginning of a nightmare. Kyle had no idea what he had started. But deep inside he knew one thing. This was no curse, this was fate, and it had just begun. The sky above the outpost was dark with storm clouds. Thunder rumbled in the distance like a warning. But inside the cage, something softer was happening. Something the guards didn't understand. Something Kyle wasn't ready to believe. She had called him mate, one single word, but it felt heavier than a mountain. He hadn't answered her, he couldn't. Not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know what it meant. That night, Kyle couldn't sleep. He sat on his small bed, turning the word over in his mind. Mate, what did it mean to her people? A friend? A protector? A life partner? The idea made his heart beat faster. Not from fear, but from something else. Something warm, something dangerous. The next morning, he walked to her cage again. The guards didn't stop him. But they watched, whispered, one of them muttered. "She's marked him," another said. "He won't last the week." Kyle didn't care. He had brought something different this time. A small metal box inside was a cooked meal. Something warm. Something real, meat and rice, not much. But more than she had seen in days when she saw him. Her eyes lit up. Not with hunger, but with relief, she sat up straight. Chains rattling softly, Kyle knelt beside the cage, opened the box and placed it inside. She didn't rush, she didn't growl, she moved with grace, with trust. Her fingers touched his hand, slow, careful, and then she did something no one expected. She smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but real. Her sharp teeth didn't scare him. Her size didn't either, because for a moment, she didn't look like a monster, she looked like a person. She pointed at herself and said, "Shari." Her voice was deep, but gentle. Then she pointed at him, waiting. He blinked, then answered, "Kyle." She nodded as if sealing a pact, then slowly, she reached through the bars again, not to grab, not to hurt, but to touch, just to touch. Her fingers brushed his cheek, rough skin, warm touch. Kyle didn't move, didn't flinch. His heart was pounding in his chest, but not with fear. It felt like standing at the edge of something new, something ancient. Suddenly a loud alarm echoed across the camp. A fight had broken out near the southern gate. Guards rushed to respond, chaos filled the air. But Kyle didn't move, he stayed with her. And she stayed with him. Then something strange happened. As the alarm blared, Shari's eyes closed. She whispered words in her own language. Kyle didn't understand them, but he felt them. In his chest, in his bones, the air grew warm. For a second, time felt slower, quieter. Then she opened her eyes. Golden light shimmered inside them. She placed her hand against his chest, right over his heart, and said one word again. "Mate." This time it wasn't a question. It was a declaration, like a key turning in a lock. Kyle sat there frozen, not from fear, but from something deeper. He didn't know what had changed, but something had. Something real that night. Kyle returned to his cabin, but he wasn't alone. He felt her presence in his dreams. This time it wasn't the forest. It was a battlefield. He saw Shari in armor, standing in front of a burning sky, and beside her was him, holding a strange blade. Their hands were joined. He woke up gasping. His hand burned slightly. He looked down. A strange symbol had formed on his palm, faint, glowing softly. It was the same symbol on Shari's collar. The next morning, the commander called him in. His face was hard, voice cold. "You've crossed a line, Kyle," he said. "She's not a pet. She's not even a prisoner anymore. She's bonding," Kyle tried to explain. "She's not dangerous," he said. "She's scared. Lonely." But the commander slammed his fist on the table. "You don't understand, do you? Her kind bond for life. They choose once, and when they do, they protect that bond with blood." Kyle left the office with heavy steps. He returned to the cage and found something that made his heart drop. Shari was bleeding. Someone had tried to hurt her. Again she sat still, but her eyes were wild. When she saw Kyle, she reached out, touched his hand, her blood smeared on his skin, and in that moment something passed between them. Silent, invisible, powerful. He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know what she was turning him into. But one thing was clear. He wasn't just feeding her anymore. He was becoming hers, and that meant the warning had changed. Not feeding her means death, but touching her means fate. The morning sun tried to break through the thick gray clouds, but the air still felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. Inside the outpost, people talked in low voices, and every whisper included one name: Kyle. They watched him now, not with curiosity but with fear, not because he had done anything violent, but because the alien giantess Shari had chosen him. And that kind of bond was not normal, not safe. Kyle felt it every step he took. Eyes following him, guards stiffening when he walked by. Even old friends didn't speak to him now. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was the human the alien touched. The one she called mate, but he didn't care. Every morning he brought her food. Not just to feed her, but because when she smiled at him, he felt alive, he felt seen. More than he had ever felt before. Shari was healing faster than expected. Her skin was no longer bruised, her golden eyes clearer. She still wore the iron collar around her neck, but she didn't seem weak anymore. She stood taller now, and whenever Kyle approached, she leaned toward him, her voice soft, her hands warm. One afternoon, Kyle brought her a book, a children's book. Simple words, big pictures. He didn't know if she could read. But she sat down beside the cage bars and watched as he opened it. He pointed to the drawings. Read the words slowly. She listened, not like a child, but like someone starved for stories. For kindness, she tried to copy the words. Her voice was deep and slow, but she tried. Every sound she made felt like music to Kyle. And when she finally said the word friend, he smiled so wide. It hurt. That night, Kyle sat outside her cage as the wind blew across the sand. They didn't speak, they just sat there. Shari reached through the bars again. Her fingers brushed his hand. Then she touched the glowing mark on his palm. She whispered something in her language. Kyle couldn't understand it, but somehow his heart did. She placed her hand over her own chest, then gently over his, 2 hands, 2 hearts. One beat, suddenly footsteps came from behind. The guards again. This time they weren't just watching. They were angry. 2 of them pulled Kyle away. The third raised a weapon. Shari stood up so fast. The ground seemed to shake, she growled, not in rage, but in warning. Her eyes glowed like fire. One guard tried to step forward, but Shari grabbed the metal bars and squeezed. The steel bent in her hands like soft clay. The guards froze, so did Kyle. She had the strength to break out right now, but she didn't. She chose not to. She only let go when Kyle whispered her name. And just like that, the fire in her eyes cooled. The bars creaked back into place. She sat back down, silent but alert, watching him, only him. Later that evening, the commander summoned Kyle again. This time he wasn't angry. He was scared. "You don't understand what's happening," he said. "She's not just healing. She's changing. Because of you." Kyle didn't answer. He couldn't explain it either. It wasn't just that she trusted him. It was deeper. He could feel her emotions sometimes, like soft waves brushing his thoughts, sadness, hope, warmth, like they were connected now in a way science couldn't measure. The commander leaned closer. "You're not just feeding her, Kyle. You're becoming a part of her. If this bond completes—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Kyle already knew Shari was bonding with him, and maybe he was bonding with her too. That night, as he lay in bed, he heard something strange. A whisper, not in his ears, but in his mind. "Kyle." It was her voice, soft, like a dream, calling to him. He rushed to her cage, heart pounding, and stopped in shock. The cage door was open. The lock broken clean off. Shari was gone. But she hadn't escaped. She was standing right outside, waiting for him, not running, not hiding, just waiting. When he stepped forward, she knelt down, massive, silent, calm, and without a word, she placed her forehead gently against his. The mark on his palm glowed brighter, and in that moment Kyle knew this wasn't just a bond. This was a vow, to protect, to stand together, no matter what came next. And far above them, in the dark clouds, something stirred, something watching. Because a human and an alien had begun something ancient, something forbidden, and something that could never be undone. The night air was colder than usual, but sweat still dripped down Kyle's back. He stood near the old generator shed. Hidden by shadows, his heart beat fast, louder than the wind. Because tonight wasn't like other nights. Tonight he was going to help Shari escape. After the cage incident, the guards became crueler. They gave Shari less food, less water. They added heavier chains, and guards doubled their rounds. They didn't see a prisoner anymore. They saw a threat. Shari stayed quiet, but her eyes never left Kyle when he came to her. She would lift her head just a little, only for him, only with him. She smiled. But Kyle knew. It couldn't go on like this. Her people weren't coming, and the humans here only saw her as a monster, not as someone who felt pain or love. One night, Kyle heard something he wasn't supposed to. 2 officers talking outside the mess hall. "She's being moved," one said. "Tomorrow," said the other. "Some lab in the city wants to study her up close. They don't care if she survives." Those words hit Kyle like a punch. His mind screamed, "She won't survive that trip." He had seen the way Shari trembled when the guards jabbed her with electric rods. He had heard her cry at night, soft, quiet, as if she didn't want to disturb anyone. She had trusted him. Now it was his turn to protect her. Kyle had no weapons, no rank, no plan, but he had 2 things: his hands and a heart full of fire. He sneaked into the supply room, stole a cutter, a keycard, and a small stun baton. He memorized the guard routes, noticed how one camera glitched every few minutes. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough that night. He slipped into the holding area. Shari sat against the wall, her wrists bruised, chains locked to the floor. But when she saw him, she smiled like the stars had come down to greet her. He placed a finger on his lips. She understood, no words, just trust. He used the cutter on her chains, sparks flying silently. It took time, too much time. Every second felt like thunder inside his head. Finally, the last chain snapped. Shari stood slowly, her tall form stretched to its full height. But she stayed quiet, gentle, waiting for his lead. They moved through the side tunnels under the outpost. Old maintenance paths no one used anymore. Kyle had found the map weeks ago, just in case. Now just in case had become right now. They reached the outer wall. One last locked gate stood in their way. Kyle pulled out the stolen keycard. Prayed it would work. Beep. Access denied. His stomach dropped. He tried again. Beep. Access denied. The third time, the lock blinked green. The gate clicked, but behind them, alarms began to scream. The escape had been noticed. Voices shouted. Footsteps ran. The sound of rifles being loaded echoed through the hallways. "Run," Kyle whispered. But Shari didn't run. She picked him up with one arm like he was weightless, and with the other she tore open the gate. They burst into the night, sand kicked up by her powerful steps, drones activated behind them. Red lights flashing, but Shari didn't stop. She didn't even look back. She ran like a storm. Fast, wild, unstoppable. But even she couldn't outrun lasers a drone fired. Kyle cried out as his shoulder burned. Shari roared, a sound that shook the ground. She turned, placed Kyle down, and stood between him and the incoming drones. The mark on her neck began to glow. So did the mark on Kyle's palm. A strange light linked them. Gold, warm, alive. And then, Shari spoke words in her language. Loud, powerful, ancient. The sky shimmered, the sand pulsed, and suddenly, the drones froze, their lights flickered and died. Shari turned to him, eyes glowing, voice calm. "You are not just mate now," she said. "You are bond." Kyle didn't know what it meant, but he felt it in his blood. In the earth, something had changed, something had awakened. They were far from safe, but they were free, and freedom with her felt right. They ran until the outpost was only a shadow behind them. The desert opened wide before them, cold, empty, endless, but they didn't stop. Not until the sun began to rise. Not until Kyle could no longer walk. Shari carried him again. She didn't speak, she didn't complain. She simply picked him up and kept going. Step after step, like he weighed nothing. They found shelter beneath a broken ridge of stone. Old ruins covered in sand. The walls were marked with strange symbols worn by time. Shari touched them gently, whispered something in her language. Something soft, like prayer. Kyle leaned against a rock, wincing in pain. His shoulder still burned from the drone's blast. Shari knelt beside him. She reached into the small pouch she had carried since the escape. Inside were leaves, crushed bark, and glowing dust. She mixed them in her palm and pressed the paste onto his wound. It burned like fire, then turned cool like water. Kyle gasped, but already the pain was fading. The wound stopped bleeding. He looked at her, eyes wide. "You saved me," he whispered. Shari tilted her head. "I protect, mate," she said, then she added something else. "Now, bond deeper." Kyle didn't know what that meant, but he nodded. He trusted her now with his life. As the wind howled outside the ruins, they rested for a while. It was quiet, safe, but peace never lasts long in stories like theirs. Far above, in orbit, a signal had been sent. Priority alert. Alien asset escaped, human involved, lethal force approved. The hunter ships launched silently into the atmosphere. They were fast, cold, and merciless that night. Kyle had another dream. He stood in a circle of fire. Alien figures surrounded him, and in the center, Shari. Glowing with power, she reached for him. And when he took her hand, the fire disappeared. But the hunters stepped forward. Their blades ready, he woke up with a start. And outside the ruins, he saw lights. Red dots dancing across the sand, coming closer. Too many. Too fast. Shari stood up before he could speak. She sniffed the air. Her face changed. No more gentleness. "Only fierce focus. They come," she said. Her voice was like thunder. Kyle grabbed the stun baton. But she shook her head. "No," she said. "You stay. I end them," before he could argue. She stepped into the open night. The wind caught her hair. Her body glowed with that same golden light. The bond mark on her neck pulsed. Alive. Then the hunters appeared. Tall machines with armor like shadows. They didn't speak. They simply raised their weapons. But Shari raised her hand first. She spoke in her old language. Words that shook the sand. And suddenly the old ruins lit up. Symbols on the walls burned bright. The ground trembled. Kyle could feel it through his skin. One hunter fired. A bolt of blue light shot toward her. She caught it, bare-handed. The light fizzled in her palm, and then she roared. The sound wasn't just loud, it was ancient. It echoed through bone and sky. Even the machines paused. She charged, not like a beast but like a guardian with purpose. With grace, with fury, one by one the hunters fell. Not broken but shut down. Their lights dimmed, their weapons dropped. Shari stood in the center, her chest rising, eyes still glowing. Kyle stepped forward slowly. The wind quiet again. The desert still. She looked at him. And for the first time, Kyle saw her not just as an alien, not just as someone different, but as a protector, a warrior queen. He took her hand, and without a word he knelt. Not because she asked, not because she was strong, but because he understood she had shielded him from death. Not once, but many times. And now he would shield her in return. In whatever way he could. Behind them, the ruins whispered in the wind, and far away, new ships were coming, more powerful, more dangerous, but now, Kyle wasn't just a mechanic, and Shari wasn't just a prisoner. They were something else, something new, something that even the stars would fear. They thought they were safe after the fight. But safety in this galaxy never lasted long. Not for a human who loved an alien, and not for an alien who called a human her mate. For one night, the stars above them stood still. The wind whispered soft songs through the ruins. Kyle and Shari sat beside a small fire, not speaking, not needing to. Her hand rested over his, their bond mark glowing gently between their skin. But the silence broke just before dawn. A hum filled the sky, deep, heavy, and strange. A sound that made birds vanish and insects go still. Shari stood first, eyes sharp, shoulders tight. She looked up and whispered just one word. Judgment. A massive ship lowered through the clouds, silver and black, shaped like a spear. No lights flashed, no weapons fired. It simply hovered above them like a god watching its children. A beam of light shot down, and from it stepped 6 figures. Tall, silent, wearing armor like glass. Their faces were hidden, but their presence made Kyle's chest tighten. Shari fell to one knee. Kyle didn't understand. Until she looked back and said, "They are the ancients, the lawkeepers of my people. They have come." For us, the tallest figure spoke. Its voice wasn't loud, but it echoed inside Kyle's mind. "Shari Nex of the line of flame," it said. "You are called before the circle. You bonded with an outsider. You have broken the sacred code." Shari kept her head down, but her voice was steady. "I did not break," she said. "I followed the bond. It chose him." The ancients turned to Kyle, their golden eyes glowing behind glass masks. "You are human," they said. "You were never meant to be part of our bloodline. But you fed her, you touched her, you made her yours." Kyle tried to speak, but the words felt small in his mouth. What could he say? That he didn't mean to? That he just wanted to help? That it was never about rules, only about feeling something true? The ancients raised a crystal blade. "Not to strike, but as a sign you have a choice," they said. "Leave her and remain human, or drink the bond elixir and become one of us. But know this, once you drink, you are no longer earthborn. You will live longer, feel deeper, and carry the mark of her people forever." Kyle looked at Shari. Her eyes were wide. Not pleading, not pushing, just waiting. She would not ask him to give up his life, but she would never break the bond either. He could feel her heart in his, a silent beat saying, "I will not leave if you stay." Kyle stepped forward. He took the small glowing flask offered to him. It shimmered like stars trapped in liquid. His hands trembled, not because he was afraid to die, but because he was afraid to live a life without her. He looked at Shari one last time, smiled softly, then drank. The taste was bitter at first, then warm, then bright. His body shook. His heart stopped just for a moment, and then everything changed. He felt heat rush through his veins, felt memories that were not his, felt voices of her ancestors whispering in his mind, felt love not as a word, but as light, as fire, as home. He collapsed. Shari rushed to him, held him in her arms. Tears fell from her eyes, not of sorrow, but of awe. The ancient stood still, watching, waiting. Then the leader spoke again. "He has passed. The bond is complete. You are now flame-born. Human no more." Shari helped him to his feet. His eyes opened slowly. They glowed with the same golden light as hers. Their marks pulsed in unison. One heart, one soul, one bond. But peace was not yet given. One of the ancients stepped forward. "Know this," he warned. "Others will come. Those who fear this bond. Those who will call it a threat. Are you ready to defend it?" Kyle looked at Shari, then at the stars above, and with a calm voice he answered, "Yes." He wasn't just a man anymore. He was her chosen, her flame-bound, and whatever came next, he would face it with her, beside her, for her. The sun was rising behind the mountains. Its golden light touched the ruins. Touched the sand, touched them. Kyle stood tall, his eyes glowing like fire. The bond mark on his palm pulsed with soft light. Shari stood beside him, her arm wrapped gently around his. No longer a prisoner, no longer a hunted alien. She was a protector, a queen, and now, his mate, the ancients, had returned to the stars. But their words stayed behind. Others will come, they had warned, enemies, leaders, people who feared what this bond meant, not just for Kyle and Shari, but for every world where love was stronger than rules. In the distance, the sky shimmered again. Ships, 3 of them. Black, sharp, silent, the human alliance. And they were coming fast. Kyle and Shari didn't run, they didn't hide. They stood together at the center of the ruins, surrounded by the symbols of her ancestors, surrounded by memory, surrounded by power. The ships landed in perfect sync. Soldiers marched out, clones, droids, officers. Weapons charged, eyes cold. At their center stood Commander Voss, a man known for ending wars before they started, a man with no patience for anything outside the system. He stepped forward, looked at Kyle, then at Shari, then back at Kyle again. "So," Voss said, "you really did it. You bonded with it." Kyle didn't blink. "She has a name," he said. "Shari. She's not an it." Voss smirked. "Doesn't matter," he replied. "You broke protocol. You bonded with a Class X alien without permission. You're no longer human." Shari stepped forward, her voice calm but deep. "He chose," she said. "I chose. Our bond is sacred." Voss lifted his rifle. "I don't care about sacred," he said. "I care about control. You are both threats now." Soldiers raised their guns. Laser sights locked on their chests, and still Kyle didn't flinch, still. Shari didn't move. Kyle reached into his pocket, pulled out a small glowing stone, a gift from the ancients, the bond flame. It glowed brighter as danger grew closer. "Last chance," Voss said. "Surrender. Or burn." Kyle crushed the stone in his hand. The light exploded into the air. It didn't burn. It didn't destroy, it revealed. A wave of energy burst across the ruins. Every soldier froze, their eyes wide as the walls lit up. Ancient holograms danced across the stones, showing visions of old bonds, of humans and aliens standing side by side, of peace, of unity. Shari's body shimmered with power. Her voice rose like a song from the past. "This bond is not weakness," she said. "It is strength," Kyle added. "This is not war. This is love." The soldiers didn't shoot. They didn't move because deep in their hearts, something old had awakened. A memory passed through the flame. A feeling no gun could destroy. Commander Voss lowered his weapon, but his face was tight with anger. "This will not last," he said. "Your bond will be hunted." Kyle stepped forward. "Then do it," he said. "Chase it, but we'll never run again." Voss turned away, ordered his soldiers back to the ships. They left without another word. The air slowly returned to normal. The fire faded, but the feeling did not. Shari looked at Kyle, her eyes full of pride, of joy, of peace. "You are now more than mate," she said. "You are flame-born. Our souls are one." Kyle smiled. Not because they had won, but because they had chosen. In a galaxy filled with laws, fear, and weapons, they had chosen something stronger, love. The ruins behind them glowed once more, and from the ground flowers began to bloom, small, glowing petals, growing where none had grown before. New life, new beginning. Kyle and Shari walked away from the ruins, not as fugitives, not as prey, but as bondmates, legends. The first of a new path, and somewhere far away, in the deepest parts of the galaxy, others began to whisper, "Feeding her means death?" No, feeding her changed everything.